So when I actually did see it, I told him, I said, no, disrespectful. Like the words that you chose were cruel to me. It wasn't protecting me. The irony of the conversation in itself was that if you actually watch the show, I'm the one who initiated the conversation in regards to the fact that the chemo has affected my libido. And I
Oh my god, sorry about that. Hey guys, welcome to Look Back with 91. Talking to you guys about Kimmi and Maurice. Now I talk about this subject quite a bit for the last few weeks, and I talk about this emotional and mental protection from a husband to a wife. What does that entail? Because this is exactly what I feel that Maurice didn't do for Kimmi. Now, I'm not going to shoot Maurice all the way because some of the wording that he used was actually what Kimmi already used. But it was wisdom and being wise about measuring what you say. It's something I can always say, hey, that wasn't appropriate. The wisdom wasn't there. You didn't use the right words. That didn't aid your relationship. That's not helping you grow and that's not helping protect your family. And so we're going to discuss Maurice and Kimmi. They did an interview and Kimmi actually came out and actually defended Maurice on quite a few things. But she also said that he needed to do better in terms of some of the wording that he used around the issue when it came to her libido and her wanting to have sex with him while she was dealing with her cancer diagnosis as well. So we're going to break it all the way down. If you're interested, stick with us. Like this video, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification of the uploads. We appreciate you. And don't forget as well, listen, if you love what we do as well, you can support us. You can support us by joining our Cash App. Actually, I lie. We don't do Cash App no more because the Cash App decided to ditch us. But you can support us by PayPal. You can also join a membership as well. It's for $1, £1, and get involved with the bi-weekly conversations we're going to be having behind the scenes. Now, if you're new to the channel, like, share, subscribe, click on that bell button for notification of the uploads. And for those of you who are returnees, you already know what it is, baby. You got the minerals. Let's get into this conversation. And let's talk a little bit about this situation with Kim and her boy Maurice as well. Let's get back to this. All right.
know that affects him and his sexual interest. So he has never forced me to do one single thing. He has never made me. He has never implied he was going to leave me. So the headlines, in order to get likes and tags, I absolutely get it. But the words that he chose to use throughout that interview, I felt were a bad choice of words in regards to me because it did.
Now she says very clearly that she didn't. She says very clearly here that in reality, the situation he chose bad words, but she actually sort of also said, "I wasn't forced to do what I did." Now I don't believe necessarily she was forced physically to do what she did, but there is a conversation that could be had around the fact that whether, and she said she vehemently denies the fact that he ever denied ever saying he's going to leave if he doesn't get sex, but there can be an overwhelming feeling that someone may not be as well behaved or support you or be loyal or love you the same way if they don't get what they want. Now, am I going to say that's the case with Maurice and Kimmi? I don't have enough evidence to say that. So I'm going to keep it open and say, I'm going to trust what her words say because I don't have any other evidence to go against what she is saying. And I said in my original video when I broke it down, I said, I'm going to wait for Kimmi to come out and say what she said and kind of judge it by that. Now, what she does make very clear is that he wasn't wise with his words. The fact that he chose the words to roll over and, just go to be in pain and go through it, yeah, wisdom in that way. Number two, I think also she mentioned about as well, just bending over and just taking it or whatever is another unwise description when it comes to talking about your wife. You're talking as if you're talking to a porn star, and that's the reality of the situation where wisdom is important. That when you speak, you can't just say anything you want to say. You have to be measured and you have to be wise about it. Let's listen a bit more. Let's listen a bit more.
Didn't protect me in the words that he chose to use to describe. Like, I think he said, bend over and take it. That's like ridiculous. Like, that's ridiculous. And I told him, I said, that was awful. The wording choice was awful.
I want to jump in and say something real quick.
So here again. So she talks about this bend over and take it comment. And I think to myself, what would be my response in this instance? My response would be, listen, do you know what? Now listening back to it, I can see how I was affected Kimmi and why she took it the way she did. We've had conversations behind the scene. And what I realized is that was wrong words to use. Whilst I believe what I said, I was trying to say something in good faith. I realized that using the words that I did has created a different impact to what my actual intentions were. I'm sorry. I was wrong about that. Thing done. But what I noticed about Maurice is pride. It's a big issue, not just in him, but in a lot of people in general, not just men, people in general. Pride. And so he refuses to actually go to that place and apologize. Well, listen a bit more and you can hear it. I won't play the clip. I'll just listen.
I was horrified too with some of the language. And spoke about having a situation.
Let me go.
Issue came up. We already had conversation about our sex life. We talked about our sex life before we got married. So this is like an honest statement. In Kimmy's world, I had made up in my head 7 days was the limit. Like, I would never make my husband go more than 7 days. I don't care if we're angry. I don't care what's going on. That was always Kimmy's rule in her head.
Now, she says, obviously, before they got married, there was a rule in her head that she was always going to go no longer than 7 days without sex. That's their rule. Now, it's really interesting, again, and I understand why some people may feel some type of way, because maybe they've watched more of the show and they have more evidence to back up their position. I'm going to only go by what I've seen so far. I think Maurice sometimes says some dumb stuff. I've seen him a few things in Love and Marriage, early first season. But from what I'm going by in both of their statements, she is a consenting, willing participant. Now, going through chemo, just by one or two people that I've heard go through it, it does drain your energy. So to have energy to even have sex is really kind of wild. But it actually does get addressed later on in this video about what that means, her having sex, and reason why she was kind of going through it even when she was in pain. And they address that a little bit later on as well. So yeah. And
so in this case, we went about 2 weeks and I was like, ugh. So it was my choice because I know that that's fulfilling for both of us. It's fulfilling for both of us. Like at the end of the day, he's not the only one missing out. I'm missing out because I don't have the same climax. I don't have the same arousal. You know what I'm saying? So I never had that conversation based on the fact that I thought he was going to leave. I know.
I mean, she articulates this very, very clearly. And when I look at her body language, I don't see someone necessarily under duress, but she may be just a great actor at doing that. Again, but what she articulates in this particular aspect is saying, hey, it also affects me. I miss out too. And I think that's very real. And I think that's very, real. And I think that's very surreal. And I think it's crazy because I think most people can see that and be like, no, there must be a reason why she's giving it. She must, because I think a lot of times people have a position when it comes to men that naturally we're evil, which is bad. And if the woman chooses to do something that would be different to other women, automatically he must have been the one that's pushing her. Must be the one that's asking her to do this. Must be the one that's forcing her to do this situation, rather than just taking what her words are on face value. And again, of course, you have to be nuanced and you have to be sometimes look beyond the surface. But again, I failed to hear anything that was going to be against what we kind of spoke about in the first video as well.
I love my husband, and that is a big part of our world. I don't physically hurt. It doesn't hurt me to have sex. It doesn't do that whatsoever. It was just the arousal of the moment in the climax that is very different for me. So I'm just not getting the same fulfillment out of the sexual activity that he was.
We got it.
So she makes it very, very clear that, listen, she's not in pain. And she's not in pain, but what she is saying is that there's a change in her arousal and in her climax. And I think that's very clear. And I love the fact she articulated that so that people don't miss the point and go left, right, and add their own 2 penny pence to it. So if that is the case, there's still, I mean, it still relates back to his original statement that she does feel pain, but no, not pain. Well, I guess not pain, but in some sense that there's some discomfort in a way that something has shifted and changed. And so, yeah, I totally understood that point. I think Funky Geneva is about to come next and articulate some points as well.
Now, those are my words, and I'm going to suffer through it while she was fighting for her life. Your words. Now, those are my words, and I'm going to own the words that I say. However, you have to take everything into full context. I didn't have knowledge of her suffering. I didn't have knowledge of her rolling over and giving it to me when she didn't want to, right? Or didn't feel the need to. At the end of the day, this is the thing. She surprised the hell out of me on television, talking about, you know what? I'm not getting it. I'm faking it. All that stuff. Like, listen, it's on national TV. So I'm like, oh, really? So you're faking it. This whole time I'm thinking that you're doing it. And it puts everything into.
And actually what he's saying does put things into context. It does put things into context, because what he's describing here at this point in time is saying that I wasn't aware of that fact she was rolling over, not feeling it, not enjoying it, not just faking it for me. I wasn't aware of that. I wasn't aware that at the time when I've become, and so when I mentioned it on the show, what I meant was, and that now I can understand where he's coming from when he says, when I mentioned it on the show, when I mentioned it on the interview, I was understanding that, oh, she was doing it for me, and I didn't realize. I thought, I thought she was in it like I was in it, but no, she was actually doing something for me, and I didn't realize that until I got told on the show. And I think that's what he was trying to allude to in the interview. But it's a poor delivery, and so with that poor delivery, you've made people assume something, and this is why on the deliverer's end, it's important to make sure that you make your message as clear cut as possible. Of course, people always want to try and misinterpret your words, but you've got to be clear about what you say as well. That helps people to understand
context when you watch the television show and then you actually see the interview. Because for me to find out that she's faking it, and then for me to analyze the situation and say it's admirable for her to do this, because number one, most people that do things for you let you know that they're doing it for you. They don't let you find out later on, oh wow, you were actually hurting or you were going through something and you were sharing that and you were doing it for me. So of course I would change my words and give better context in any type of interview. However, I still think that you don't do it. You don't think it was.
I get what he's saying. I get what he's saying. So he's saying basically, why am I going to change my words when that's exactly what happened? I know it doesn't sound good to you, but that's exactly what happened. I didn't know, and I found out that she was literally rolling over and faking it seemingly, right? And trying to make me go through that situation. Now, someone could also say, and I have to be very fair, that as he's now describing that makes you think that is Kimmi now covering him in this interview by saying what she said earlier on? Is she only saying, "Oh, that's not what it is. I'm heavily involved in everything else, etc., because she doesn't want any backlash anymore to come onto Maurice?" That could be also a consideration. I have to be aware of that and open to that could also be the possibility as well.
A little cringy to even want to have sex with her while she was going through that. And I asked that because typically if somebody's not feeling well, we don't make them cook. We don't make them wash the dishes.
Get back, because there's an important part to this video, which I think you can see. I want you to pay attention to her facial expressions. The question
why she was going through this.
See, this is the thing. We weren't doing all the days she was doing good. Unless I didn't know that either.
Interesting.
So can you ask you earlier, would you rephrase anything?
What's wild about that is, did you notice she never nodded her head? What people usually do when they hear something that they agree with, they tend to nod their head. Now, of course, there are times where people don't, and they're just literally listening. But literally, as he was talking, this is quite a sensitive subject. So I would expect that she would nod her head to say she's in agreement with what he's saying. She actually doesn't. Watch again. Just watch again one more time.
All right for her to forego that one duty while she was going through this?
See, this is the thing. We weren't doing all the days she was doing good. Unless I didn't know that either.
Interesting.
So can you ask you earlier, would you rephrase anything that you said? Because it seemed your wife just revealed that it was your words, right? And how you said things, bend over and take it. I've done this many times.
It's like she's not protected by whatever I do. That's my job. That's why God gave her to me, is to make sure that I have a covering and protection over her at all times. And if she feels like my words are crass, then I'll change my words. I'm not one of those people that say, man, I said what I said. Now, mind you, that's a great quote and everything else that goes around on social media. I said what I said. I don't even know where it came from. But
Candy.
I'm not one of those people. It came from
Candy on the Housewives of Atlanta. She said it on.
There isn't boy, when I watch it, if I watch it from a body language perspective, yeah, I do get a different perspective. I can't lie to you. I haven't watched it. I didn't watch it all the way through. I watched the first minute or two by myself. Then I'm watching it more and more now. And I'm like, a lot of times he's talking, she's not nodding her head. Like when he said, I'm not one of those people that don't say, I said what I said. She doesn't nod her head to say, yeah, he's not one of those people. She keeps it very straight. Interesting. It could be that, listen, she covering him big time, you know. I'm gonna leave it there. But I maybe we'll revisit this a little bit later. But yeah, I can see from body language aspect, she ain't inspiring that, you know.